just had some audio issues and I have rebooted the stream. I'll give a few minutes for people to get back on before we really jump back into it. Somebody let me know if the audio is better, please, in the chat, because I have really no way of checking. What do you mean waiting for a luminostic? Okay, so at any rate, I don't want to really start completely over. But just to recap, basically what I was saying is that totalitarianism is coming to the United States. Like, this is not a drill. This is not a joke. Before Trump was even elected, I noticed from the propaganda around him that he was going to be installed as a sort of faux dictator, meaning he's not really in charge. But, you know, you can go back to that year, I guess it was 2016, and watch the political videos. It was not difficult. The strategy was painfully obvious the entire time, you know. And now here we are with the riots in LA. He just said something about, a few hours ago, I think he said something about liberating California by sending like every military department, or you know what I mean? I don't remember his exact words, but it's happening. You know, it's definitely happening. The objective that I described was basically to consolidate power into one party. This is why, actually, my Eye of Horus video, if you watch that, I talk about this. What I said then, I think it was 2020, is that you'll see them start to swap, like, narratives in the parties, right? So the left would become the censorship party instead of the right, you know, and various aspects would sort of start to get blended together. It serves numerous purposes to confuse people and also to sort of begin the process of consolidation, right? And demonization of the left, you know, I called that one. It's something they've been doing forever, but I knew they would ramp it up a bunch, you know. And basically what the propaganda machine does is they take things that the left is correct about, and they take them to extremes that are just like evil. The operations on children, for example, you know, those kind of narratives are propaganda driven. In fact, on both sides, pretty much all of it is. People don't think of this shit on their own. You know, it's fed to them. And it's used to instigate the other side. The BLM stuff was also like that. That guy was not Rodney King. You guys know who I'm talking about. The one that started it all. He put a gun to a pregnant woman's belly during a robbery. He had, I think, 10 felony convictions, some of them violent. If he was in California, he would have been locked up for life like 7 convictions ago. He was in the process of committing fraud and trying to scam and rip off a small family business with fake money, high on meth and fentanyl. And he was about to get into an SUV and drive that vehicle on these super powerful intoxicants into heavy traffic. And it's very likely that he died because if you put an upper of that magnitude with a downer of that magnitude, if you add -10 and +10 together, you get 0. And then if you add a bunch of adrenaline to that for the heart to stop or something, you know, and there was conflict with the coroners. The point that I'm getting at is that there is institutionalized racism, you know, and there are terrible things that happen to black people that don't deserve it because cops are assholes. This definitely does happen. But why didn't we riot when the cops actually did unalive a perfectly innocent, unarmed, autistic kid that was black in Colorado for no reason? Why did we choose the biggest POS on earth to martyr? Because that's how psyops work. You know, they choose these people deliberately. Just to give an example. You know what I mean? So here we are in the current shitstorm. I got to mention this too before we move on from this. The whole thing with Trump and Musk. When Musk said the thing about Epstein and Trump, which also couldn't be more obvious. You know, Trump has miles long history of accusations, lawsuits settled out of court, disgusting things he said on tape about minors. You know, there's a recording of him talking about going into the girls, I think it was like a softball team or something that he owned or managed. They were underage. And he's recorded talking about, you know, making excuses to go in there and saying I can get away with stuff. He literally says I can get away with stuff like this. Literally, I can get away with this at the end of the part of the interview about this situation. You know, it's mind-blowing. But anyways, as an apparent defense of himself, he reposted something from a lawyer that represented both him and Epstein. And what it said was, this is the lawyer speaking, I defended both Donald Trump and Epstein, and I spoke to Epstein 9 days before his death. And I asked him if he had anything on Donald Trump. I specifically asked him about Trump, he said. Do I need to explain this? What that is? Like, it's the worst lawyering I've ever seen in my life. It was basically an admission of guilt. Why the hell would you just randomly say to Epstein, by the way, do you have anything on Donald Trump? Unless your other client, Donald Trump, was curious and worried that he would, you know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. It's an admission of guilt. And I'm honestly a bit confused by it because I can't imagine a lawyer of that caliber, that his clients are billionaires, would be that stupid. It almost seems deliberate. But it was Donald Trump that posted it. So what is going on? You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like I detected something that requires, you know, being very sharp or anything. It's, to me, that's like super stupid obvious. That it's just absurd, you know? That's like the worst thing he could have said. And Trump posted it himself. Point I'm really making, though, is that this whole thing of consolidating into one party, right? If you know anything about Technocracy, Inc., Musk's grandfather's organization, and their plan to end democracy in the United States, to merge Canada, Panama, Greenland, the United States. I think there might have been another country, but they were all the ones that Trump and Musk were talking about merging together, you know, in democracy, install these technocrats as basically a committee of dictators. And look what's happening. You know, we had Musk in the Oval Office standing up while Trump was sitting down, speaking 1,000 words more than he did, like exerting dominance all over the place. Right? And years ago, it's one of the things I mentioned, that Musk is probably in charge because that's how they pull rank. He's above Trump on the totem pole. He has more money. That's how it works. There's no way Trump is in charge. Musk pulls rank for sure because how long their money is what determines their status, period, end of story. You know? So as soon as they have this rift, Musk immediately mentions creating a new political party. Surprise, surprise, surprise. right? I really do think it's all theater, and I think it's all planned. I think even that Nazi salute was planned. It was all part of this theater, basically. And then if you look at the Palantir thing, right? Is that how you say it? Palantir? The surveillance group. The guy that's spearheading it, I can't remember his name, but go look it up and just read some of the things this guy has said in the past. If you are MAGA or were MAGA and you thought that Trump was anything but deep state, you need to admit that you were fooled. It couldn't be more obvious. You know, the Stargate thing. It was like $500 billion in like an AI project, mostly for surveillance. And now this Palantir thing. And you know what Palantir is in the Lord of the Rings? Go Google it if you don't, you know. I'm not really a paranoid person, and I try to be positive, you know, and I'm not about like fear-mongering for views or whatever. That I would love to not have to be saying any of this. But the reality is that basically worst case scenario is here. It's here. And what actually inspired this stream tonight, is the audio all right, guys? Nobody ever said anything in the chat. What actually inspired this stream tonight is that somebody sent me a video of this guy. It was brilliantly spoken, and he was talking about how the clown show and a lot of other factors that are exactly congruent with the fall of Rome are, you know, this isn't, it's a funeral. That's how he put it. You know, he said that all these things, all these signs and whatnot are the laughter of the death rattle. It's over. The U.S. is actually going down. And our opinions diverged eventually, I think, because he was saying basically, so what next? Either we have a super strong leader arise, which I don't think can happen because, you know, the Trump assassination attempt that was obviously completely staged, that's not how they would do it these days. They have satellites that can stop your heart. You know what I mean? Like, it's just stupid. Untraceable poisons, like there's so many ways to make it look like an accident. Our intelligence communities are so advanced. They have so much experience now. Some sloppy ass shit with a, you know, no, that's not, like Kennedy was in a moving car, you know, it's just stupid. But I think if that person did come along, they wouldn't have a chance. You know, the machine is too well-oiled. It is almost ubiquitous in its surveillance capacities and analysis abilities. They're already talking about preemptively arresting people because AI algorithms can determine before they commit a crime that they're going to, right? This is actually something that I think it was Steele, who Trump has put in charge of, I think, the Stargate thing, by the way. He definitely has talked about using AI to like completely control humanity. And this is one of Trump's right-hand men, you know? Saving American democracy, right? Where was I going with all of that? Yeah, you know, the idea that some, you know, people's hero is going to rise up and just crush the machine somehow or rally the people. I mean, I'll give it a shot. You know what I mean? Like, I would happily let them shoot me or stop my heart with a satellite. I'll just reincarnate. You know, I don't really, it's not a concern for me. But I don't think that the algorithm suppression, I mean, it's just, that's a long shot for anyone, basically, is what I'm saying. There are people that are willing, but you know what I mean? I just don't think that's. Another possibility is that parallel systems evolve, right? That people break away, miniature kingdoms, you know, the United States breaks up the way the USSR did, which I think would be great, probably. that's possible, but I don't know if they'll allow it. You know, I I don't understand how they think, and I don't understand why, but they seem to be hell bent on maintaining control, no matter what. To the extent that it's like, if it's going to get away from them, they're going to just like, if you can't have her, no one can, kind of jealous boyfriend mentality, you know? But another thing that he mentioned is that the reality of the world is that the slaves want owners, that the masses want owners. And the overlords want slaves. And there is a sovereign person among them that is not going to comply with that system. And the only way, I think, to navigate this situation is for those sovereign people to come together and consolidate and wait out the storm. You know, at the end of this little clip, this guy said, a lot of us thought that we were here to save the empire, that we were going to transform the consciousness of the masses and salvage it. You know, like when you fall in love with some hot narcissist and you're like, I can save them, you know? No, you can't. No, you can't. And this institution is like a psychopathic narcissist, sociopath. We're not saving it. You know, and he said, you're not here to save it, you're here to outlive it. And I think he's right about that. I've been kind of fighting that conclusion because I would kind of like my life to just kind of go back to normal. You know, I was not really fully functional in the golden years of the empire. You know, I had not dealt with all of my self-sabotage stuff and addictions and instability and all that stuff. And now that I'm totally grounded and wise and ready to do battle, it's like the empire is not there anymore, you know, and that's a little bit obnoxious, I have to admit. It's like I'm finally ready, but it's dying. And ain't that a bitch in a way, you know? So sorry, I'm kind of rambling now, but the main point I'm getting to here is that is the truth. There have to be little satellite colonies of the right type of people, because the rest of them are going to destroy themselves by and large, you know? And I honestly think that's the plan. If you really pay attention, the system, it's not the system, it's the universe, I guess, you know, nature. It's not failing. It's doing exactly what it's designed to do. And on some levels, it's cruel and terrifying. But if you're really able to like rise above it all and kind of look down on it with a bird's eye view, you can kind of see the purpose of it and the necessity of it and the reasons for it all. You know? So, for what it's worth, I'm just kind of sharing my 2 cents that the reality of having to escape the collapse and form communities in places that are not going to get nuked and that are not directly in the path of the Eye of Sauron or Palantir. It's time to actually make that decision, I think. You know, and I used to feel a lot more like we have to stop all the wars and we have to enlighten all the people, and I still wish we could, don't get me wrong. But now I'm kind of realizing if you can't do that, maybe you should just let the ones that are willing to go to war kill each other. to such an extent that there's just no more of them left. You know, and the ones that want to fight their neighbors and can't live in peace with them, let them. And then when they're done, we can come back out and start over. You know, but I honestly think that's where it's at. My biggest concern is that the technology will allow them to restrict and control things to the extent that it's not possible even to create parallel systems. But I also believe there's a teleology in nature, you know, that things are going somewhere for a reason. I've referenced a bunch of times in the last 2 streams this probability calculation of Penrose's for random chance as the cause of the universe being 1 in a number so big we don't have a word for it, and it would take us at least 100 billion years to count to. You know what I mean? And that's just, that number is just the probability that the low entropy state that the universe started in would happen by chance. That doesn't factor in all of the other super improbabilistic things that keep pushing that number even more gigantic to the point where it's basically infinite, meaning that the universe, it doesn't necessarily mean there's a God in the sky God sense, but that there is some sort of integrated intelligence in the wiring under the board, you know, at the very least. So I really have trouble with the idea that this is all just headed towards a like AI zombie, you know what I mean, dystopian nightmare future. And I also doubt that we're headed for complete and total annihilation. Something has put a tremendous amount of thought into its creation. And the level of genius that it expresses is beyond, I mean, there are no words. And as far as, you know, the necessity for a miracle to pull us through this and over it and beyond it, we exist, and the probability of that is, you know what I mean, that's already, the most impossible thing has already happened. So there's definitely hope, you know. And in my own life, I've experienced so many improbable miracles that I realized eventually that the universe is actually made of them. They don't just exist. Miracles don't just exist. They're actually reliable, given certain conditions are met. So it's really difficult to plot a way forward from here because there's just so many variables, so many possibilities that are outside of our control. But I also know that if I take complete responsibility for my emotional state and make sure that I do everything I can to maximize my receptivity, enhance my clarity, go out into the Maloka, take my medicine, and listen, we'll know what to do and when to do it. But my intuition in this moment is that it is deadly serious. And our commitment has to be absolute. And for myself, I'm still going to try to act on a couple of like different timelines simultaneously. You know, on the one hand, I'm going to operate as if there is a possibility that we can actually lift up humanity and unite them, and that we can get through this without a total collapse. You know, that we can re-engineer certain aspects of the system, you know, in order to function optimally. It wouldn't really be that hard. It really wouldn't. That's one of the things that pisses me off the most about this. In the last stream, I mentioned that today I did a patron-only stream on degree 16 of Freemasonry, and it laid it all out in the most beautiful and concise possible way that I don't think any person could really argue with any of it. You know, it just really drives home the fact that the only reason we don't have a world that really is engineered to support, you know, that supports the fruition of the expression of the highest potential of humanity. The only reason we don't have that system is because there are people that are subverting it. Not because we don't know how, not because politics is a matter of opinion, not because ethics is a matter of opinion, not because spirituality is a matter of opinion. That's all lies. None of that is true. None of that is true. There's objective truth in all of those arenas, and it's easy to tell, easy to discern, and it has been obscured from us deliberately so that we could be exploited. That's it. Period. End of story. Like we have had the solutions and the knowledge since ancient times. And it's funny that people have accused the Freemasons of like hoarding this power so that they could like rule over humanity or whatever. And there are groups that are connected to that have that attitude. It's not the entire institution, though. And the real point is that the real reason for secrecy is to protect that knowledge. You know, and I know I've said this a lot over the last couple of months, but banned in Egypt as soon as it started to escape the lab, because the pharaohs knew it was a threat. They created a monotheistic religion, banned the mysteries. Same thing happened in Rome. United States, pop culture, media, narrative, evil, evil, evil. Don't look at this, don't look at this. It's evil. You know, that's the real truth of it. And they believed, as did many of the ancients, all the way back to Thoth talked about this in the Lament of Thoth in Asclepius, that eventually that knowledge would escape the lab and become the like standard for humanity. In the beginning of Morals and Dogma, in the apprentice degree, he says that eventually the great revolution prepared by the ages will march, which has for its aims the amelioration of mankind from bigotry, servitude, ignorance, despotism, etc. And it goes on along those lines, and it's just immensely beautiful and perfect. And I think that he was correct. It is the destiny of mankind to step back into the light. You know, another thing he says in that book that I really like the way you phrased is, man had the truth, but he found error. And this also is just a cyclical process. You know, everything is a reflection of one thing. So just as the sun rises and night falls, there are periods of darkness for humanity where the truth is lost. And then there are periods where the truth is known and these are our golden ages. And I think every cycle, just as like when you follow Fibonacci, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Or if you're going down the spiral, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. These cycles do represent progress. So the last time there was a golden age, the truth was less concise as it's going to be this time. Every time around, the darkness gets bigger and badder, and then when the light comes, it's brighter. These things are contingent upon each other. This is also one of the reasons that the existential crisis that we're confronted with right now is so intense. Risk and reward are commensurate, that's not the right word. You guys know what I mean. You could also say that the resistance directly informs the gains, that they're sort of inverse correlates. No, Pitbull, I'm afraid it's not paranoia, man. It's not paranoia. Like I said, one of the reasons I've kind of stumbled on my speech a little bit in the last, the earlier it was worse, the other stream. I'm afraid to say certain things because, my income is pretty dependent upon this channel, and I can't have it getting deleted, and that's happening a lot all of a sudden. But those places in El Salvador, it's not just a prison. They're, ovens, big red stains. It's like that, And I sensed this decades ago, that they've always kind of done this. I suspect the Bilderberg hotel meetings where they have all these world leaders go in and no one, there's the woman that owned the Washington Post used to go before she died. Dan Rather was there, major media figures, but not a word is printed. And I think they go in there and basically roll dice for who gets the next genocide and that kind of thing, because if you look at history, you have Germany, then you have Stalin. I'm not saying this is an order, but I'm just different ones. Stalin, Pol Pot, right now in Gaza, like they do these kind of population reduction events, and I seriously think they probably roll dice for them in Bilderberg. And years ago, it just hit me. It's the United States' turn next, And now that I'm watching it happen, I can't really write that off. But no, it's not paranoia. It's not paranoia, and it's also a matter of necessity. The oceans are practically empty compared to 1970. Rivers have been lighting on fire since the 1970s. The rainforest is disappearing. The air is contaminated. The electromagnetic field is contaminated. We've managed to poison like every different aspect of the environment. We cannot continue producing this much toxic waste and consuming resources like this. People talk about how we could sustain a population of this size, and it's like, okay, sure, if we completely re-engineered how we exist on this planet overnight, sure, but it's just not really practically plausible that that's going to happen. And then we have the obsolescence by AI of everyone, just about doctors, lawyers, government officials. What do you need if we really have objective AI with a 3,000 IQ? Or you really want a bunch of corrupt old men sitting around making those decisions? They're gone. They're done. And then we also have advances in medicine that are such that people will be able to live indefinitely, like within a few years. What are you going to do when no one dies? So the whole Depop thing is a certainty in my mind. They have to manage, they've always managed the population. They literally have wars based on their projections of different industries. How many blue collar people do we need? And then when there's extras, you make a bunch of money by sending them all off, and then the economy improves because a bunch of jobs open up. You know what I mean? That's what all that stuff is. People, I think, turn a blind eye to all of this stuff because it's just boneheadedly obvious, People just believe whatever they choose to believe. And in the last stream, I think I mentioned that that's actually not cool. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. But the people being convinced that opinions are valid, in politics, religion, that's not true. There's objective truth in all those arenas. And that's one of the ways that they've kept us from figuring that out. Everybody's just kind of convinced that it's all just a bunch of opinions and nobody really knows anything. It's not real. There is a, objectively best socio-economical system, and it is, you could determine what that is with algorithms. It's not even difficult. The only reason that system is not in place in the United States is because it does not serve the purposes of the exploiters. That's the only reason. It's not that we haven't figured it out, It's not because there are just differences of opinion about shit. There's objective truth. And it's easy to figure out. I could give some examples, That's what wedge issues are, too. They're things that are difficult to pin down in that way, and that's why they're used to keep people constantly divided. And if you notice, the main narratives that they use as wedge issues are not really the most important things that humanity is trying to solve. They're not world hunger, they're not housing, they're not war, they're abortion and homosexuality and religion in schools and stuff, I mean, those things matter. But there's a reason that abortion is one of the most hotly debated subjects in the political arena, rather than world peace or economic equality or, maximizing our education systems. And the reason is that both sides are right. To an extent, right? And then they also feed each side bad arguments to use so that they look stupid in the eyes of the opponent, and they kind of do. Like the "my body, my choice" slogan. I'm not saying I totally support people's right to do anything, obviously. But I did some research and determined that there is a new genetic code for a new individual at the moment of conception. And if you have something in your body that doesn't have your DNA and it has its own unique DNA, it's not you. It's a virus, it's a bacteria, or it's another person. So, I definitely don't take sides with the people that say they shouldn't be able to get an abortion. But I also think that arguing it's my body, my choice, that's not the right argument, because it isn't true. It's just objectively false. The other side is right. You're yelling this shit in their faces, and they're like, no, it's not. And they're right. Objectively, they are correct. That's not how to deal with this stuff. You'd be much better off acknowledging you're right, and then continuing the conversation with something like, it is not attached to anyone. It has no awareness as a clump of cells. You know what I mean? That's a fair argument. But my body, my choice, just screaming that at people is just fucking retarded. And it's not even true. So that's yeah. So what I think I kind of got off track because what I was talking about is how we kind of have to do two things at once here because nothing, only the madman is absolutely certain. You know, it all kinds of shit could happen. Aliens could appear tomorrow and just explain things to humanity in a way that everyone could completely understand. And you know what I mean? Like the most improbable thing you can think of could happen. You know, so it's like when things are this intense and there's this much at stake and there's this little time, it's tough. So, you know, for me, I'm operating on the level of like still trying to hope that between myself and however many other people are trying to accomplish the same thing, we can actually ignite some sort of awakening on a mass scale. It's definitely not out of the question. One of the things I mentioned in the very first video that I made on this channel is that through entrainment, and probably entanglement as well, if you raise your own consciousness, it's going to take the rest of humanity with it. If it may be a subtle effect from one single individual, but the more you develop yourself, the stronger that effect is going to be. And at the time that I said that, there wasn't actually a lot of evidence to support that entrainment could do something like that. But there is now, because they've actually measured the brain waves of meditators and discovered that whoever the highest cycle was, the rest of them chased it. They entrained with it. And even more importantly, maybe, is that the actually highest cycle ever recorded was a person on psilocybin. So we know that these catalysts actually do take us further and faster than people that meditate. So, you know, it's definitely a true fact that when we improve ourselves and that when we ascend in our consciousness and when we cut the tethers, both to the overseers and our sandbags of trauma and self-limitation, that we really are having an invisible influence on the entire net of being. That's a real thing, you know? And the reality of that is that there's nothing that the most evil person on earth can do to stop that influence. You know what I mean? There's no resisting it. It's just a law of nature. So that is powerful. And I'm not going to give up on that. But we also need to start preparing for a layover, the flight of civilization, I think. And it's really a difficult thing, you know, because obviously I don't have any resources. In fact, I have to go to the hospital tomorrow because this issue that I have is spreading to other parts of my body. And I just lost 6 months of income from having to get surgery, and now I'm like looking at more medical bills, and you know, it's like that's just fucking perfect. And that's really a major hurdle. You know, without resources, it's really difficult to do anything. But we have to try. My plan basically is this. The jungle, if you get into the right elevation, there's hardly any insects. There's fruit everywhere. There's water plentiful. You know, it's not too hot. It's not too cold. And I know the jungle. So I know what to eat. I know what the medicine is. I know how to prepare everything. So my plan is that in September, we're going to get into the jungle. And then hopefully we can build a network of people. I do have a property for sale in Ecuador. If I can sell it, I'll buy something. And then I already have a core group of trusted people that I know are cool. They're definitely not weirdos. Definitely can trust them. You know, we've all tested each other to various degrees, and we know that even at our worst, we would, you know, I mean, we definitely have a good start. We have some very highly intelligent people also. So I'm not really talking about a commune or anything like that. I don't, that's not me. I just want to see people that have attained to a certain kind of disposition trying to maximize their potential within whatever context is available to them, And I'm willing to bet that if we manage to get something set up, when the last person arrives, the fucking shit will totally, it'll be just in the nick of time. At the very least, man, if you live in a major metropolitan area, get out. You got to get out. Better to run away to live to fight another day. I just really do hope that the people that believed in Donald Trump are starting to realize how badly they were fooled. And also the people on the other side, the thing with Harris and Biden and all that was unbelievably embarrassing. It seems to be happening, like my feeling that the only way that they could really fuck themselves up at this point is through hubris, taking things too far too fast before they had really entrenched themselves enough. And that might have just happened. We'll see pretty quickly. That repost of the Epstein lawyers should have done it for everyone, really, because that was just crazy, man. He doesn't have anything on Donald. I asked him specifically, like, whoa, dude, what did you just say? Really? And Donald, you reposted this as if it's a good thing for you? Like, it's wild, man. Sometimes it makes me question myself, this whole, because my belief is that the whole bumbling clown thing that they have presidents for is just a scapegoat and a smokescreen. But that move from Donald Trump makes me wonder if they really are just bumbling idiots that just don't think or something. Because that was, I have no words. Cheers, J-Ron. Yeah, well, at this point, I think I'm kind of rambling a little bit. Hey, it's 11:11, but I appreciate you, man. Yeah, I know you can't super chat me. It's because I'm demonetized for talking like this, but there is PayPal, Cash App, Zelle. You can also become a patron. And I'm actually want to mention this again, regardless of all that if you are a patron already, you got to watch the secret stream today. Make sure you don't miss that one because it was just, like I said, I'm tempted to just pull that book out and read it to you guys right now because it's just like exactly the most relevant, poignant, perfect fucking thing for this moment that probably exists anywhere on Earth. It really is sad too, you guys, that basically my research in I don't know what to call it, the secret doctrines, really made it clear to me that the way to bring humanity into homeostasis with itself and its environment and how to engineer cultures so that it is, the best, the optimized for humans has been sitting around collecting dust in books, in occult bookstores and Masonic temples and, Pythagoras all the way back. We've always known. It's always been there. And it's literally just the fact that nature sort of engineered in a way that facilitated the ascension of power of psychopaths and, just brutes and whatnot. And they had entrenched themselves enough by the time these teachings really started to take root that they were able to suppress it. It's just so stupid, that all of this human potential has been wasted, and so much more suffering than is necessary has to have been endured and continues to be endured. There's no reason for it. There really isn't. This Masonic ideal, for example, that there is sort of a natural law of ethics, right, that exists almost in the same way that gravity does, is true. It's true and obvious and so commonsensical when you really hear it spelled out the way that it is in degree 16 of, should I just maybe I'll even just read like a little tiny bit of it or something, and then you can decide if you want to go become a patron and support the demonetized, oppressed, but well-meaning channel of ours. Let me see here. It's funny, too, that, when you think about how this stuff has been painted as like this demonic, evil thing to suppress humanity, and then you hear this, and you're like, wait a minute. That's the exact opposite of that. Like, literally the most opposite of it that you will ever encounter anywhere on Earth. And then you realize, like, holy shit, they did do that on purpose. I'm going to say, I need to repack my coca. Wad in a second here. Okay, so I'm just going to read a few choice selections here. The practical object of Masonry is the physical and moral amelioration and the intellectual and spiritual improvement of individuals and society. Neither can be effected except by the dissemination of truth. It is falsehood in doctrines and fallacy in principles to which most of the miseries of men and the misfortunes of nations are owing. Public opinion is rarely right on any point. And there are and always will be important truths to be substituted in that opinion in the place of many errors and absurd and injurious prejudices. There are few truths that public opinion has not at some time hated and persecuted as heresies, and few errors that have not at some time seemed to it truths radiant from the immediate presence of God. There are moral maladies also of man and society, the treatment of which requires not only boldness, but also, and more, prudence and discretion, since they are more the fruit of false and pernicious doctrines, moral, political, and religious, than of vicious inclinations. Much of the Masonic secret manifests itself without speech revealing it to him who even partially comprehends the degrees in the proportion as he receives them, and blah, blah, blah. Let's skip that part. And Masonry labors to improve the social order by enlightening men's minds, warming their hearts with the love of the good, inspiring them with the great principle of human fraternity, and requiring all of its disciples that their languages and actions shall conform to that principle, and that they shall enlighten each other, control their passions, abhor vices, and pity the vicious man as one afflicted with a deplorable malady. In truth, the universal, eternal, immutable religion of truth is planted in the heart of universal humanity. No creed can survive that's not built on this foundation, and none of them have been. It is the base and the superstructure. To make honor and duty the steady beacon lights that guide your life vessel over the stormy seas of time, to do that which is right to do, not because it will ensure your success, or bring with it a reward, or gain the applause of men, or be the best policy, more prudent or more advisable, but because it is right, and therefore it ought to be done. To war incessantly against error, intolerance, ignorance, and vice, and yet to pity those who err, to be tolerant even of intolerance, to teach the ignorant, and to labor to reclaim the vicious, are some of the duties of a mason. A good mason is one that can look upon death and see its face with the same countenance with which he hears its story, that can endure all the labors of his life with his soul supporting his body, that can equally despise riches when he has them and when he has them not, that is not sadder if they are his neighbors, nor more lifted up if they shine around about his own walls, one that is not moved with good fortune coming to him or going from him, one that can look upon another man's lands with equanimity and pleasure as if they were his own, and yet look upon his own and use them too, just as they were another man's, that neither spends his goods prodigally or foolishly, nor yet keeps them avariciously and miserly, that weighs not benefits by weight and number, but by the mind and circumstances of him who confers them, that never thinks his charity expensive if a worthy person is the receiver, that does nothing for opinion's sake, but everything for conscience, being as careful of his thoughts as of his acting in markets and theaters, and in as much awe of himself as of a whole assembly, that is bountiful and cheerful to his friends and charitable and apt to forgive his enemies, that loves his country, consults its honor, and obeys its laws, and desires and endeavors nothing more than that he may do his duty. And such a person may reckon his life to be the life of a man, and compute his months not by the course of the sun, but by the zodiac and the circle of virtues. The whole world is one republic, of which each nation is a family and every individual a child. Masonry not in any wise derogating from the differing duties which the diversity of states requires, tends to create a new people, which is composed of men of many nations and tongues, all bound together by the bounds of science, morality, and virtue, essentially philanthropic, philosophical, and progressive. We have for our basis a dogma of firm belief in the existence of good and its providence, and of the immortality of the soul, for its object the dissemination of moral, political, philosophical, and religious truth, and the practice of all virtues. In every age, the formula is liberty, equality, and fraternity, with constitutional government only recognizing legitimate authority, and so it teaches its members to love one another, to give to each other mutual assistance and support in all the circumstances of life, to share each other's pains and sorrows as well as pleasures and joys, to guard the reputations, respect the opinions, and be perfectly tolerant of the errors of each other in matters of faith and beliefs. And so on. That's just like a tiny little bit of it. It took us a year, I think, to get through Degree 28, an entire year, because I had commentary to everything. So it, but yeah, it was a year, an hour a week for a year. The name of that book is Morals and Dogma. It was written by a 33rd degree Freemason, Albert Pike. In 1851, it was published, I think. A lot of it is taken from Eliphas Levi's Transcendental Magic, which I also have been doing streams on, where I offer commentary and read the book. But basically, I don't even know if I got to that part that I was originally referencing when I brought it up. But one of the things in capitalist United States that people argue with a lot has to do with like selfishness, basically. You know, get your own, leave mine alone. The extent to which we're obligated to help each other. You know, obligated is not the right word in reality. You know, the enlightened person, and by the way, when I say enlightenment or illumination, I'm talking about something on a spectrum, not like, you know, in the sense of like, oh, the Buddha, you know. The reasonably illuminated person, we could say. The gnosis that they have experienced communicates to them, I guess, or it sort of allows you just to see how the balance is created by certain conduct. You know what I mean? And you realize that if you are able to achieve this balance, if you, like he said, don't think of your charity as expensive, you know, because there's a reciprocation, not necessarily even from the individual, but from the entire environment. You know, if the people around you are loved and supported, that is going to, it's an echo chamber, you know. The opportunities that have been provided for you by others in all these myriad forms, you know, whether it's someone that built a house or paved a road or, you know, everything that we didn't create ourselves is created for us by others. And the healthier and happier and, you know, like anxiety and fear kills creativity, it lowers IQ. You know what I mean? When you lift up your fellow man, you're lifting up yourself. And in the ultimate reality, it is you, you know. Another really important aspect along these same lines is that one of the major tragedies, I guess, travesties of the current ontological model, you know, the abject materialist paradigm, the random chance universe, there is no in there, out there, you know, there is no out there. I mean, there's no out there. It's all in there, and everything in there is out there. You cannot deny purpose in the universe, teleology, without denying it in yourself. It's the same thing. You know, and when you see all these lemmings of humanity running off of cliffs, that's largely why. You know, the vapid girls that are just like eaten alive by social media, and you know what I mean. I don't have to like elucidate that too much. The vapidity of our culture comes from a crisis of purpose, and the denial of teleology in the universe. It's an echo chamber. It's all reflections, you know. And think about this. I think Penrose's probability, the 10 to the 123rd power, 1 in 10 to 123rd power of the universe arising from chance, just that one aspect of it, not even all of it, and just the low entropy state at the beginning, they've known that for, I think, like 25 years. No one really contests his calculation. Some people say that it's not valid for other reasons, you know, like there are detractors, but it generally is accepted as an accurate number that we don't even have a word for because it's so big, right? They've known that for, I think, 25 years. They've had that number for 25 years. And yet, they still fight tooth and nail against the idea that it's anything but random chance that's behind evolution and existence. Even though if it was any other subject, and they were confronted with a 1 in 10 to the 123rd power possibility, they would say, no, that's stupid. I'm not retarded. That's impossible. You know what I mean? This is the only thing that scientists would say, well, the probability is this number that would take, an infinite amount of time to count to against. But we're going to go ahead and assume that's the truth. That's really what we've been living with. Seriously. Seriously, try to think about that. It's hard. I know. It's hard. But that's real. That's actually fucking real. Difficult to wrap your heads around. How is that science even? That's not. It's just bias. I mean, I've been talking a lot about how there's this new paradigm emerging with all this new proof, but really that single thing is proof enough that this whole model that's entirely based on random chance couldn't possibly be correct. That number is huge. And it just boggles my mind to think of all these physicists seeing that and going, okay, let's run with this. Fuck is wrong with you people, man? Really? And don't think I'm arguing in favor of God, because I'm not necessarily. I mean, I vacillate on that. I really do, because sometimes it seems like God is propping me up, and it's hard to not believe in God. At other times, though, it's pretty obviously preposterous, and my personal feeling about it is that the intelligence that is the organizing principle is developing as a consequence, or in how would you say, they're simultaneously informing each other, creation and the intelligence that is developing. It's developing in not congruence, but I can't find the fucking word right now. It's on the tip of my tongue, but together and as a result of each other. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. That's the only reason I can think of the universe existing, even, so that process could play out, And that's another one of the big problems, because as soon as you try to have this conversation with most hardcore materialist science types, they can only think of it as either sky god or random chance. Sky god, random chance. I've literally tediously explained to people that gave me that reaction, oh, well, you're stupid sky god, when I say it's not random chance. And they just can't even, what comes out of their mouth next is still, oh, you're stupid sky god, because they just can't even deal with it. And you know what I think that really is? It's not actually that they're too stupid. There is a deliberate evasion, they're evading because it's obviously true. And I'm not sure how this works exactly, but people become more attached to their beliefs than, you know what I mean? Confronted with the truth, they'll still cling desperately to their beliefs. I can't really suss that one out for myself. Yeah. All right. So my end times rant, I think, has pretty much played itself out. So I got a little bit of time. If you guys have any questions or subjects that you want to throw in the chat, I'm happy to hang out for a little bit longer. And also, we may still have a spot open from July 11th to August 11th for one person or a couple, and then from the 23rd to any time really in August. You can stay as long as you want, I guess, at this point. And then, well, mid-August, say August 15th or something. And then in September, on September 1st, we are going to Manu, into the jungle, and we have plenty of space there. So if you're interested in that, shoot me an email. Also, I do consultations and in several different arenas as a sort of unlicensed therapist, because I hate the word life coach. I'd rather just say unlicensed therapist. I teach people that are interested in hermetic reasoning, I guess would be a good label for it, although I hate to call it anything. Guitar lessons, and we like patrons because we're demonetized. So if you're not a patron, please go become a patron. And if you want to come hang out, shoot me an email. I don't believe in God personified, dead man, but as a collective higher consciousness or intelligence. You don't have to believe in that. The collective intelligence is pretty much a fact at this point. You know, that's one of the principles, I guess, of scientific illuminism. You know, that you want certainty, not faith. And certainty we have to use pretty loosely, because the master only knows for certain that he does not know for certain. That's it. You know, you can have some very strong suspicions, but as far as knowledge of metaphysical and spiritual and esoteric things go, that's as far as it goes. You really can't do any better than that. And the universe seems to be designed to ensure that. You know, if you observe a particle too closely, there are quantum fluctuations that the more precisely you try to measure it, the less observable the thing itself becomes. You know what I mean? I really do think that there are sort of boundaries to our knowledge. We can make very well-informed inferences about things like reincarnation. And I've experienced telepathy for sure, that there's absolutely no possibility that it was a coincidence. You know, precognition, that there's no possibility it was a coincidence. I've located people that I wanted to talk to from 1,100 miles away and just driven my car right to them. Legendary people. You know, I did that once, and 3 times total I managed to intersect with people like that through a intuitive process, I guess you could say. 4, actually. And the whole, you know, universal mind thing, we have evolutionary adaptations that are context aware, that have been observed in several species, including a plant. We know that neurons aren't required for cognition. Mimosa hostilis has memory. I'm sorry, is it? Yeah, Mimosa hostilis has memory. Mimosa pudica can count. By the way, both of these plants contain DMT. So I don't know if there's a connection between like higher consciousness, even in plants with DMT in them, or, you know, one of the acacias actually has flowers that look just like little suns too, which I think is wild. DMT containing acacia. That particular plant actually has phenethylamines in it too, 5-MeO and some type of phenethylamine. You know, we have slime molds out engineering humans with computers. We have evidence of quantum consciousness. There's no real doubt that there's some sort of integrated intelligence in the universe. There never has been in the mind of anyone that's not brainwashed, I don't think. You know, it's just really obvious. I talked about this last night, but I put a lot of time into making sure that the holes that I thought I saw in evolutionary theory were actually there, because you know, trying in the interest of humility and also just the genuine pursuit of truth, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just Dunning-Krugering and just, you know, just ignorant of the subject. And it does turn out that the glaring problems that you could drive a truck through, you know, they're actually there. And that's another one of those things that people have this like black and white kind of concept of, that it's like you either believe in a creation and that's where it all started, period, end of story, or you believe in blind random mutations and evolution and that somehow these cells were self-organizing in such an intelligent manner that they constructed an eyeball and wired it to a brain, with the right type of nerves to the right part of the brain. I mean, and all the rest of it. There's so many, like the taste buds distribution, and how there's like, there's some to cover all the bases, and just, I mean, I could go on and on and on. Stomach acid in the stomach. I mean, it just, and all these things are interdependent, right? So if they didn't all like evolve in the right order and in the right time or all together, you know what I mean? Like, it just, the point being that people generally think it has to be one or the other, and that does never made any sense to me. Why wouldn't it be a work in progress? It's real. The existence of an intelligence integrated into the universe does not make it suddenly a fairy tale. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't even understand the logic there. Of course, it would still be a process. Evolution happened, but to suggest that it was like blind and random is just stupid. And during the course of my research, what I actually found out is that suddenly there were a whole bunch of top scientists saying, yeah, that's fucking stupid. And that really made me happy. Because I was really worried that maybe I was just stupid and asking stupid questions because I, was missing something. So it was quite a relief to see people like Michael Levin, from Harvard and a lot of other greatest minds kind of saying like, this is just institutionalized bias. This isn't real, And another thing to remember is that the people that roll their eyes at you for saying this, like, oh, you're just uneducated, ask them to actually explain to you how it all works. They're just taking shit on faith, just like the religious people they criticize. They really are. They studied what? Like high school biology, most of them, and maybe a couple of classes in college before they were specialized in sitting in a cubicle or something, They don't know. They don't know shit about these things. And anyways, knowing the mechanistic processes behind them, that's not the end of the story. When I was looking into the eyeball thing, I was like, okay, so how did these cells figure out how to arrange and juxtapose the lenses and like where everything was if they're just blind? And it's like, oh, well, these amino acids and proteins and, these different chemicals and lipids and, they reacted to sunlight and shit. And it's like, no, man, come on. That's like the mechanical stuff, but like how, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, see this thing? Like, and then the AI started to kind of like, oh yeah. Well, all these fucking scientists are also starting to like say this, it's not blind. It can't be. And actually what's happening, I guess, what Levin thinks is happening and some other people is that it's actually being stored in the electromagnetic field, and that's what's informing the cells somehow. But that raises all kinds of other questions too, like how the fuck does the field know when it's a human that it's like informing the cells of and where they are, and like at what point is the field connected to us? That implies a soul, because there's something in you that's interfacing with the field and telling it what to do. That is probably our DNA, and our DNA does actually have antennas. They're actually fractal antennas, and that's a whole other subject. But I hadn't really completely put that together, I guess. I knew there was antennas and DNA that interfaced with the field, but I hadn't really considered yet that that's actually what our morphological processes are informed by, that determine whether we're a fucking pickle or a person. And I do mean pickle, because even the chemical processes that cause a pickle to form would on some level be informed by that field, if I understand everything correctly. So what does that mean? That the field is basically, it's not God exactly, but it is like what people have sensed as that, I mean, maybe it's God. Maybe, I guess, everything's God. I don't like using that word because I need something more flexible, or you know, you know what I mean though. It's omniscient because it contains all the information of everything that's ever happened, according to most physicists. You know, all of the information is retained in the quantum at the quantum level. So it's omniscient. If time is nonlinear, it's definitely omniscient. It's omnipresent because it's everywhere. I don't know that it's exactly omnipotent. The thing is, we can't tell that because if it didn't want to make a perfect world or to fix something or to help you because you prayed to it, because it's restrained by natural law from overriding its own laws, it could be omnipotent, and it's just it chose this sort of like frozen format. You know what I mean? So the omnipotent thing we can't figure out, but this field is definitely omniscient and omnipresent. And it's nothing. And all of those things start with the same symbol that we use for zero. How much does it cost to live like me? I don't know. I mean, it's not as cheap as you would think, but my overhead's a little bit higher than it should be because we normally do retreats, and I had surgery, and so we rented this big property, and then I didn't have any income. So, like, things are not like I can't answer you from my point of view because it's been just like not normal. But I guess you could rent a house for like a decent house for like $250, $300 a month. Food's pretty cheap. I mean, I'm sure like my house would cost probably 6 times as much as it does in the U.S. It would be like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a month, and it's under that for sure. Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot cheaper, but as far as advice goes, you know, like you have to liberate yourself. Like there's no options. You have to. You like Bob Dylan once said that a man is a success when he decides what he does with every moment of his time. I'm in and out of that, I guess. So I'm like a quasi success, but it's true, you know, like you really need to be your own sovereign master to the extent that it's possible, you know. So the only thing you can do is figure out, you have to be objective about yourself and your abilities. And you also, though, need to be able to recognize when you're imposing limitations on yourself that shouldn't be there. And you have to figure out how to work online, really. The digital nomad thing, I think, is the only way that you can escape. Unless you can figure out a way to make a big pile real quick with crypto or something. But, you know, Substack is a good option for, you know, you can blog about anything. And they also do video, and it's uncensored. But yeah, that's really the best advice I can give, is that you have to figure out what you actually care about, and you have to do that no matter what. You know what I mean? No matter what. Don't let anything stop you. You have to care about what you do, or else you're going to be depressed, period. Period. Like your life, it's not like you just need to do the things that you care about, but your life needs to be about the things that you care about. You know, that's the only way to be content. And it's the only way you'll ever be good at anything, really, too. Like, really good at it. So, you know what your skills are, and hopefully you know what you love. And so you have to find a way to monetize those things. And you can do it. I'm sure you can do it. It's just a matter of did he doubt or did he try? Answers aplenty in the by and by. I've never been to Cambodia. Is telepathy limited to just speech? Oh, you mean like cerebral kind of communication? No way, man. Of course not. Oh, he's in Cambodia. Yeah, I get it. We have 11 viewers and 11 likes right now. Please consider supporting the channel as well, you guys. I can't believe I'm going to the fucking hospital again tomorrow. I'm not happy about that at all. Oh, sorry, I didn't tell you. I'm in Peru. So yeah, you could get a house for $250, $300 in a decent place. You know, you got to be careful where you go. Don't go to Lima. Stay out of the cities. Sacred Valley's cool. But yeah, you got to figure out a way to make money independently first and foremost. All right. Anybody else got anything for me specifically to respond to? Otherwise, I was gonna maybe do a music stream tonight, but I might be getting too tired now. I'm not really sure. But I'll give you guys a few minutes to pop anything into the chat that I might be able to help you with. By the way, that's another benefit of becoming a patron. Our community definitely consists of people that are working on ways to like collectively lift ourselves up safely. You know, like we've had this arbitrage bot idea. It turns out that to do it the way I wanted to would require a lot of work and probably more money than we have available to us. But we could probably still put it together bit by bit. And we have it designed in a way that everyone can interface with it on their own, right? So no one's in control of the money. No one can access it. But the benefit is that the larger your capital is that you're working with, the higher the win rate of the bot is, and obviously the bigger the profit is. So this is like the way the elites do things is they work together, right? And if we don't do that, we're not ever going to rise above all the dirt and grime. To rise above all the dirt and grime, add the right spice at the right time. And we have a pretty good community. I've known a lot of these guys for years and years and years. And a lot of us have put each other in positions of trust, and we're not disappointed. So we have a really good foundation for, I don't want to call it a community because it is a community. But anything like that resembles an organization or like a commune or something, you know, like I really try to steer clear of those vibes hard. But it is true that if we don't actually take meaningful action as a collective, we're fucked. And the reality that I've experienced is that people, you know, I'm always saying it's one thing doing one thing. People are like, when you put chemicals together in a petri dish or whatever, and some of them slurp together, You know, they bond. That's what happens with people as well. So if you know who you are and you're able to assess yourself honestly, you'll know whether or not you can trust the people around you. That's pretty powerful little insight, properly applied. That doesn't mean that innocent people never get victimized. But I said that the first condition is that you really objectively know yourself. Those people don't qualify, unfortunately. That's awesome, man, that I changed your views on Trump. You guy's a piece of shit. You know, and that's a crazy thing. People have got to stop with the whole, like, if you don't support my side, you support the other side thing. I don't, man. I really don't. I lost so much support when Harris and Biden were in office, like hundreds of dollars a month in my Patreon. And followers on different platforms. I got shut down, man. Because I was like, yeah, fuck that guy, but fuck that guy too. You know, like, are you serious? You're going to answer, you're like, we need to get this racist out of office, and you're going to put a guy that had to drop out of the race against Obama because he said, come on, a clean, articulate, well-articulated, educated black man. You just don't see that. What, bro? What? I've never heard Trump say anything like that. You know what I mean? It was so bad. I saw the video where he called the little black girls cockroaches, compared them to cockroaches. He put millions of black men in jail with his racist legislation that was designed to help clean up the black unemployment problem by penalizing crack more than powder and putting them all in prison. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck are people talking about? And you guys have probably all heard me talk about this before, but they do that on purpose. They choose them because they're the biggest pieces of shit they can find, and also to cause cognitive dissonance and to increase the division, because the people across the aisle see that and they're like, look at these fucking idiots. But then the Biden-Harris people are looking back across the aisle and going, they're saying that this guy that, like, has, you know, more pictures with Epstein and Diddy than, like, anyone ever, and has said all this disgusting, sleazy shit about underage girls, is going to, like, round up all the pedophiles, and, like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? They do it to both of them. So you're both looking across the aisle going, like, holy shit, man, you guys are fucking stupid lunatics. Fuck that. And it's like, before you accuse me, take a look at yourself, you know? It was crazy, man. And then Harris, you know, they're like, oh, yeah, somebody with honor and integrity. Like, motherfucker, were you not there when she said that the only thing we need to know about Biden is whether he's more of a grapist or a gracist? And she said, I believe all of his victims. And then when he's like, picks her as his running mate, she's all, I am honored to serve beside such a great man. It's like, bitch, 2 weeks ago. What did you say 2 weeks ago? You are black and you're a woman. You called him a grapist and a gracist. And now you're honored to, and the left is going, she is so wonderful. And we're like, dude, you guys all are fucked. Like, both sides of the aisle, you're all just fucked. This is fucked. I was stunned. I mean, I've never had that. I've never held the masses in the highest regard. I'm not afraid to say it, obviously, you know. But shit was crazy. Watching people, the Trump train and the Biden-Harris shit was just fucking mind-boggling. It really was. And by the way, they do that on purpose. They always put a vice president that hates the president. It's a threat, like a tacit threat, right? Because J.D. Vance hated Trump. He didn't change his mind. He was actually given $25 million by some fucking technocrat billionaire that's trying to enslave humanity that told him what to think and what to say and what color mascara to wear, right? That's why they put him there. The other guy, Trump tried to have him hung. He hated him too. Harris hated Biden. Biden eulogized a Klansman, right? A leader of the Klan, called him a friend and mentor. All this other racist shit, they put him under Obama. He had to drop out of the race, the preliminaries with Obama, because he said something racist, and they put him under him as vice president. You guys seen a pattern here? Go all the way back to Lyndon Johnson and Kennedy. They killed Kennedy. LBJ the next day was like signing every single fucking thing that he refused to sign. And then he ordered an attack on an American ship. But that's a completely different story. But there's a recording of that, a phone recording of a U.S. president ordering an attack on a United States military vessel. I want that fucking ship on the bottom of the fucking ocean. But they didn't manage to sink it, and there were survivors. And on their deathbed, they all were like, our own government tried to kill us. Can you imagine, like, think about the people that idolize presidents and, like, the way they think about military people, service people, if people actually knew what it was really like. You know, that whole thing of, like, the 9/11 being perpetrated by our own government. Oh, they wouldn't do that. It's just too insane to entertain. It's like, dude, they kindled the same energy that lights the stars upon men, women, children, grandmothers, dogs, burn their fucking shadows into the concrete. 145,000 of them, and it took some of them months to die an agonizing death. And that was not a military base. They were talking about babies and shit. 2 cities, man. And people think they did it at the same time. Right? And then they were like, oh, no, that was terrible. No, they did it fucking 48 hours apart. They dropped the first one, saw what it did, and did it again. And how much worse are people now than they were back then? And come on, y'all. Delusion will not protect you. You know what I mean? These people maintain these delusions in order to not have to confront reality. But guess what? Reality is going to confront your ass anyways. It does not give a fuck whether you're pretending that it's not there or not. You know, this is one of the reasons that the New Age idea of manifestation is so dangerous and stupid. You know, you can believe in your truth all you want, and if it's not congruent with actual truth, it's not true. That's your personal belief. That's your opinion. That's not truth. Your truth is not true for you. Your truth is true if it's true, if it's consistent with objective truth. You know, and it is true that I think that, like, we do experience slightly different realities, but we're talking about on the level of, like, relatively minuscule quantum configurations. You know what I mean? Like, that's not the way these people are trying to sell it. It's not like that. I heard some women talking about how they weren't going to be on this timeline when the totalitarian state came, and that they were only still here to try to help other people get off of this timeline or something. And just like, dude, you could just jump timelines at will. You would have been gone a long time ago. Like, and why aren't there people disappearing everywhere? Why aren't there New Age housewives jumping timelines instead of, like, divorcing their husbands and getting jobs at, like, Dunkin' Donuts or whatever? Like, where are they? So they don't leave from our point of view, I guess. Is that, you know, come on, y'all. Come on, stop it. It's great to be open-minded, but not so much so that wind starts whistling through your ears. Yeah, that was the USS Liberty. There's a documentary about it where they interview a bunch of the soldiers. So, yeah, what I was getting at before basically is just that I don't know why people think that if their leaders are willing to carpet bomb Gaza or nuke fucking Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that they would care about flying a plane into a building. You know, like, if you're willing to kill people for corrupt, I mean, I don't even know what the motivation for Nagasaki and Hiroshima was. I mean, they attacked a military base. You respond to that by attacking their military bases. You don't just nuke a bunch of moms and dogs, you know? Like, I think the fact that people didn't actually, like, storm the government buildings and drag them out then and there is pretty horrifying. Like, as soon as people realize what happened, there should have been hell to pay. You know, and I really, to a certain extent, I see what's happening in the U.S. as a sort of reciprocation. Because a lot of people in the U.S. don't realize it. You know, exploitation economy is taught in European colleges, but not in the United States. They don't realize that their sort of inflated wealth came from exploitation of damn near the rest of the planet for like centuries in horrible conditions, and you know, that people would find a hero and they would come up with a system. Like Gaddafi was, you know, they painted him as a dictator, but he was actually made the most amazing system in the history of humanity. People could even go to college for free in other countries with on the government's dime, and they would pay for it if they didn't offer it in Libya. And they all had free electricity, and his parents lived in a tent until every single Libyan had a house, and on and on and on and on and on. I mean, it was just absolutely incredible what he was doing. U.S. kills him. You know, they do that all around the world, destabilize anywhere that's going to make them look bad. And then they're like, why do people hate America? It's like, you stand on the backs of brown people and then look down on them. You know, like this whole immigration thing that's happening right now. I do agree that just having people flood over the border that have been, you know, maybe raised by cartel for 4 generations, you know, I mean, it's not untrue. And it's also not untrue that your average liberal has no idea what those people are like. And they just think it's racism. You know, it's a great wedge issue because both sides are right, really. You know, that it is a huge fucking problem, but it's also extremely wrong to turn people away that have been supporting you and allowing you to have a great life at their expense. And then they're like, fuck, I can't do this anymore, help me. And you're like, bitch, get the fuck out of here. Put you in a concentration camp. You know what I mean? That's what Americans look like to the rest of the world right now. Because everyone knows it but them. You know? Everyone knows it but them. And some of them do know and just don't care, and then some of them know and do care. You know, of course there's all kinds. But overwhelmingly, I think Americans don't really realize that A, they're not the greatest country in the world by any metric, except for military spending, percentage of people incarcerated, infant mortality, you know what I mean? And a bunch of other shit you don't want to be number one for. It's like 22 in education, 31 in happiness or something, and like 33 in healthcare. Nowhere near one, not even top 10 in like by any metric, I don't think anymore. Not even top 10. The only thing that they're the greatest at is the thing that made them think they were so great because they had more money was just from exploiting helpless people at gunpoint. That's why you thought you were great, because you allowed your government and corporations to enslave children and shit. That's your greatness. It really is. Congratulations, America. Fucking dumb motherfuckers. I do not abide. A documentary I would recommend? There's some really old ones like Baraka. Trying to think, like, I know there's all kinds of amazing documentaries, but I just don't really watch anything for so long. I don't remember anything. My favorite movies are like Waking Life, Pan's Labyrinth, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Natural Born Killers. The Dark Crystal. Four Rooms was a favorite too. The documentaries I used to watch a lot. American Pimp. American Pimp is actually a extremely entertaining documentary. I knew one of them too. They're just, it's ridiculous, man. It's a crazy culture, those pimps. They make more money than like anyone else on earth. I had no idea until I watched the documentary that they were like that smoked. It's completely insane. There's a pimp off in LA every year. No, not LA, in Vegas. And it's wild. They go to this pimp convention and like the cars and clothes and stuff is completely outrageous. Anyways, guys, it seems like the questions are not really pouring in, and I'm starting to lose focus a little bit. So, yeah, Borat. Borat is definitely one of my favorites. Borat is for sure. Baraka with a K. It means life off, or I mean life force, and like, I don't know, one of those little island Polynesian countries. Can you say that hit my soul? What? Sorry, I was just scanning for questions that I might have missed. Yeah, the pimp off it's like just this like competition where they bring all their women in their cars and their clothes, and then somebody gets awarded Pimp of the Year. Anyways, cheers, guys. Good night. I might pop on and play a few songs if I can find the energy. Got to raise money for these upcoming hospital bills, man. I cannot believe we're going through this shit again already. But keep your chins up, guys. Keep networking. You know what I'm saying? Self-improvement. Lift thyself up. You know what I mean? Know thyself. And we really do have to pull some sort of unity movement, or we're just going to get rolled over, you know? I mean, we have to find the smartest people with the best character and align ourselves with them and figure out how we can complement each other in ways that don't even expose us to any kind of risk, so that there's no weird vibes anywhere. And we have to take action, or else we're figgity fucking fucked. So, yeah, it's Bitcoin, man, and I would really appreciate that for sure. because I am sick of this shit. Don't get old if you can help it, you know? And the thing is, like, I eat organic. I don't rage and party. I haven't in years and years. I did live hard when I was younger, but I'm a little bit irritated. Actually, you know what's crazy? The surgeries, actually, except for the dental stuff, the hernia surgeries is the only time I had a straight job in my life. I ended up with a double hernia that took me out for the last year, basically. Like, that's fucking great, you know? Shouldn't have done that, I guess. No, the Patreon takes money. So, I mean, Bitcoin is great, or PayPal, Cash App. Those are all great ways to support. Patreon is for if you want to support long term, you know. But even like people that do consultations and stuff, a lot of times they'll just contact me directly also from the Patreon because they know they take like 15%. And please don't sign up through Apple because they add a huge charge on your end and they keep the money for 3 months. If you use your Apple device, they keep the money for 3 months. They charge you way more for every month. And then they take more percentage from me. So just don't use your Apple iPhone to sign up for Patreon. I'm young. How can I not get old? You know what's crazy about that? You don't have to if you get rich. I hate to say it that way, but that's how the rules are, you know. Look into Michael Levin's work in bioelectricity and whatnot, and cell reversal, age reversal in cells, I mean, is just a few years out. You know, they've already done it in eyeball cells in some research group. And yeah, I mean, according to Michael Levin, who's 100% legitimate, I believe everything he says. They're going to be able to regenerate limbs and reverse aging within, 5 years or something. And in my opinion, they probably already have that technology. And no, it's not adrenochrome. Adrenochrome would actually accelerate aging. Adrenochrome is the dumbest conspiracy theory in the history of conspiracy theories, probably. And I'll explain all that maybe in another video if you guys want. But yeah, for real, I'm going to go get a snack. And I appreciate each and every one of you, but please heed my advice and fucking, we all got to do everything we can. This is not a test. This is not a drill. No, it's not an infection. I had periodontal disease because I was born with extra teeth. I was born with teeth, basically. And so my teeth grew in extra crooked. And my mom got best breast implants instead of getting us braces, I guess. And so that's what happens. Yeah, so I don't have an infection now, but yeah, that's what it was. It was periodontal, and it got so bad because I went to a dentist in Ecuador that said that nothing could be done. I just gave up because that's what he told me. And then I came down here, and the dentist is like, "What? It's only stage 2. You can just get an operation." And I was like, "What? Shit!" And by that point, my jawbone was exposed, and I was in like agonizing pain all the time. I still have one side that I need to do, also. But yeah, that was crazy. Because what are you gonna do? They told me they couldn't do anything, so I thought I couldn't do anything. So my jawbone was literally like exposed in my face for like months. And eventually, yeah, of course, it started to cause agonizing pain. And then they're like, "Wait, no, we'll just sew this up. What are you talking about?" I was like, "Son of a bitch, man." I guess, that's the thing. I grew up so poor, we never went to the doctor. And you get poverty trauma, right? So, like, I still have that mentality. Like, if you haven't shot me, I'm not going to go to the doctor, probably. Even if I have 20 grand in my sock drawer, I'm going to think I can't do that. That's for rich people or something. Something along those lines, It's something I really haven't gotten out of my system yet, really fully. I've realized recently, because I'll let things go for so long. I realize it's conditioning from childhood. I don't even know why I started talking about that, except maybe encourage you guys to, look for these kind of tendencies in yourselves and don't let them compel you to like let a hole grow in the fucking side of your face for months. My Patreon is here. It's in every video description, and it's also in the chat. But I will put it in the bottom of the chat to make it even easier for you. And there's 6 years of content. There's like 100 videos in the Masonic degrees collection alone. Well, there's 40, but there's 100 of them that exist, and I'll put them all in there eventually. Got hit by a car in my teeth. I don't know what you're asking, if what is good for that. Sangre de Drago is good for anything, really, in terms of like rebuilding tissue damage. But you have to take only 10 drops in water for like 10 days, and then you have to take a break, and you also have to replenish the creatures in your gut after that, because it kills everything. All right, guys, good night. I'm not in any kind of condition to continue articulating coherently, so I'm going to bounce. But I appreciate each and every one of you. Hey, what is that on my neck, man? Did I get bitten by something? What the hell? That's weird. Anyways, thank you guys so much for being here, and those of you that are talking about joining the Patreon, I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you anyways, and probably see you Tuesday. I know I'm doing Eliphas Levi, the next part of that book, on Wednesday. Maybe tomorrow. We'll see. Good night, guys.